The United States Supreme Court is the Amy Coney Barrett court, and we're just living in it. What do I mean by that? How has she become the swing vote? Why is it so important for the moderates and Democrats to try to get Amy Coney Barrett to side with them? How do we count to 5 without her in order to get rulings? What has she done recently in 4 different Supreme Court cases involving Donald Trump? I break it all down for you on Legal AF. Here's an After Dark clip. So look, you and I, the reason we're sometimes inaccurate about our predictions or our good faith analysis of what we think will happen at the United States Supreme Court is because, frankly, we're watching a struggle for the soul of the Supreme Court, by extension, the United States there. And Amy Coney Barrett is, I'll just say it aloud one more time, she is the swing vote. It is the Amy Coney Barrett court. It's not the Roberts court. And that means that in close call 5-4 decisions, where she votes is what the majority decision is going to be. And that has been going on for the last 2 years, and certainly this term in particular. I have to think out loud, I'm going to posit out loud that Amy Coney Barrett, who sided with Roberts and the Democratic wing of the Supreme Court just 2 weeks ago, before the joint session speech, to 5-4 decision. Again, she's in the 5. It's the Amy Coney Barrett court. We're just living in it. That she got so bashed by voting with John Roberts to force the Trump administration during the pendency of the appeal to pay out $2 billion of U.S. aid, that humanitarian organization under the State Department, its obligations already incurred, that she was so bashed that not only did Donald Trump feel he had to come out and console her in public, which of course I don't think she appreciated, especially since she was also bashed for giving him sort of the stink eye when he walked by her during the joint session speech. But she was attacked, I'm sure violently attacked. They said she was Amy Coney Barrett. They called out the fact that one of her 8 children is somebody she adopted from Haiti. I mean, MAGA got MAGA on Amy Coney Barrett's backside. And now we were like, yeah, all right. It looks like this could be the voting bloc. Roberts and Barrett joining the other 2 to rein in Donald Trump in cutting off the fuel supply for funding in an arbitrary and capricious fashion, regardless of the program. We're like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that one. And the reason we can't get the strike zone right, to use my baseball metaphors, is that the strike zone keeps changing. It's like an umpire. One inning, you know it. It's underneath the armpit and down to the knee. That's the strike zone. And the next inning, it's at your chin and he's calling a strike. And we're like, why can't we figure this out? It's because they're not figuring it out. Amy Coney Barrett either got bashed to crap and she didn't want to do it again, or she found a way, in some intellectually honest or dishonest way, to side with the other side. Automatically, the other side is Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas. That is a solid 4 for anything in favor of the executive branch, regardless of what every other judge has said about it. 3 are by themselves, right? You've got Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor. And the question is these free radicals in the middle, Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. Roberts is center right, and Amy Coney Barrett is center right. But she plays the role that Kennedy had played. It was the Kennedy court for years, and Sandra Day O'Connor played. Except they're more to the right of either of those people. But now, based on what happened 2 weeks ago on approving the $2 billion being paid and affirming the judge's order, I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. She's not going to like the fact that aid to teachers, grants to teachers to work in inner city schools to help children, okay, our public children, our public education system is being cut off without notice in the middle of a school year, harming teachers and children alike under a false flag of DEI. I'm thinking, no, she's not going to. The woman with 8 children, I'm sure they're all in private school, but she's not going to go for that, right? It's based on the last result. No, either because this is a make good, a makeup, or she found a way to slide over. Everybody wrote an opinion. That's how at odds with itself the Supreme Court is. Everybody wrote one. But at the end, it doesn't matter how many opinions you write, because it came down to a 5-4 to allow Donald Trump to cut the spending to teachers and students. You know, he's already chloroformed the Department of Education. Let me just say in with a shout out to Kanye West. You'll never hear Michael Popok say that usually. Donald Trump hates American school children. There's no other way to put it. He's killing public education. He's killed it already with its regulations and all the programs that go along with it, including for those that are disadvantaged and disabled. And then at the same time, he's killing off the teachers who don't, some of them don't want to really voluntarily go into inner city schools and urban schools, blue state schools, because, it's treacherous. They need a little battle pay. And that's some of this grants was for that. So he cut the cord on that as well. And my takeaway is this does not bode well for me about all the other spending cut cases, arbitrary and capricious cases that are in the pipeline on their way up to the Supreme Court. If Amy Coney Barrett is not going to dig in, which she didn't, and she is just going to twist in the wind, depending upon whoever talks to her last or who bashes her last. What did you think, Ben?
I think that this is where someone like an Amy Coney Barrett over intellectualizes these things and views it as, look, procedurally, all we're doing is we're issuing a stay in favor of the Trump administration. We're not necessarily saying that the administration is right in withholding the grants, but we are saying we need to preserve the status quo. And the status quo as frozen right now is that the Trump administration said that the grants don't go. So isn't that freezing the status quo? No, the status quo is that they're supposed to get the grants. It's kind of like what we saw with the DC Circuit Court of Appeals ruling we covered last week, Popok, with the National Labor Relations Board, where they viewed the preservation of the status quo for purposes of staying, which is kind of freezing in time, that the NLRB member does not go back. When it was like, well, you're then buying into the Trump regime spin of it, that's the status quo. The status quo is that the person shouldn't have been unlawfully filed. So to me, and it gets a little more complicated, but if you were to ask Amy Coney Barrett, hey, you just ruled against school children, what do you think her answer would be, Popok? That's not what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
She goes, all I'm saying is we're preserving the status quo.
Federal rule of whatever and the gravamen. I'm like, what are you effing talking about? You just hurt inner city school children. And this lack of connectivity to the human dimension. These are people being deported and sent to killer jails, never to be heard from again, right? These are families that are being broken up. This is your financial security and your ability to care for yourself and for your loved ones and for your aging parents in the future that's at risk. Don't talk to me about procedure.
It was one of the things that during COVID, the way that it was really exposed there, like as you had these mass casualty events and people were dying, it was obvious that a lot of these MAGAs, not a lot, most, didn't care about people dying. That's why sometimes you call it a death cult, because just the idea of well, someone just died. That's not bad to you? What are you talking about? There were mobile morgues and they were like, Dr. Fauci. I'm like, what are you upset about? What someone's dying, and then the person from their family, a MAGA family, they would have people die and they would just be like, whatevs. And the whole thing is so utterly bizarre to me though, but it's why I try to break down my hot takes and talk about just things like empathy and love and just common sense, because we have to reconnect with reality. Maybe it's in an advanced digital age, whether it's the social media apps and all the info is making mush brains of ourselves, and we don't, I don't know. I just know we have to return to empathy, love, understanding, friendships.
Welcome back. Legal AF, the podcast, 5 years in the making. If you didn't know why we call it Legal AF, now you know why. It's every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Watch us there and then listen to us as well on audio podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. Midas Touch, number 1 in the world, the Brothers Podcast. But you know what's number 11? I almost forgot, the Legal AF Podcast. Forgot where I was for a minute. Legal AF Podcast number 11. We're trying our march to get to number 10 and pass and even higher, and pass a few MAGA podcasts along the way. With your help, we'll do it. Watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, leave comments, Boom, we're suddenly in the top 5 before we even knew it, all because of you. So, and while I got you, come on over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN. I do it in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. I got about a dozen collaborators there. You're going to love the work we do every hour at the intersection of law and politics. Again, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Legal AF, the podcast. Every hour on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF MTN. Hot takes at the intersection of law and politics, and help us get our podcast into the top 5. It'd be amazing if we could pull that off by the summer. With your help, we will. I'm Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.